Welcome, everybody. We are live here on the VeryDAO YouTube channel. We're here for the state of crypto with the one and only Reggie Middleton.
Hey, Reggie, how are you doing today?
I am appreciating sunshine.
All right. You guys haven't had much sunshine for a few days. Those fires in Canada covered you up for a while, huh?
Yeah. Was it yesterday, day before yesterday? It was dark orange Paul. You had about 1 block visibility.
Yeah. Looks like
It
the
looked like the
apocalypse
apocalypse.
descended on New York, huh?
Yeah. It looked like a bad apocalyptic movie.
Right, right. Well, glad to see that the air's cleared up there. Listen, it's been a while since we've done one of these talks. The subject that we're going to want to be talking about today is the state of crypto. The Veritasium official community has been on my back about getting you on board and getting your thoughts about the state of crypto as we see it today. There's a lot going on in the general financial community, and you've got a great macro background in that, but there seems to be a lot going on in the crypto world, and it seems like there's a conflict that's coming to a head between where crypto is and where the world of finance is, and we couldn't think of a better person to talk about that than you, Reggie Middleton. Lisa's done a lot of background research about where we are today, and I think we want to talk about a broad range of subjects. So, Lisa, do you have a couple of questions you want to kick Reggie off with? And then we want to get the Veritasium community in here to ask some questions live as well.
Yeah, thanks so much, Trey. Reggie, I wanted to start off with kind of what I think is on the tip of everybody's mind is the XRP case. I think everybody's anticipating to hear a ruling from Judge Torres today about specifically some of the information about tokens and secondary markets. Do you see any of that kind of rolling over to affect these new cases against Coinbase and Binance, or how that will play out to affect the crypto markets?
Well, first I have to roll out my litany of disclaimers and don't get in trouble requests. I'm not a lawyer, and even if I was a lawyer, I haven't been following the case in detail. And even if I did, I'm not privy to everything that is there. One thing, I have an experiential law degree. That's a fancy way of saying I get sued a lot. So the facts matter, and the facts of each particular case is different, and that makes each case almost non-fungible like a token. There is some similarities, and what I'm interested in personally is the ruling on the fair notice defense ruling. As I said, it was a total silence until this video started, and now every scooter in the world decides to go by, but literally 2 scooters in a row. So interested in the fair notice defense ruling. Very, very interested to hear what the Hinman emails say and how much leeway that the judge is willing to give those emails in terms of favoring and not XRP, but Ripple and the CEO defendant and his co-defendant. And that's just about it. If things go Ripple's way, I think it materially weakens the SEC. The SEC's modus operandi was to go after entities who couldn't defend themselves properly and get a settlement from them and a consent decree that favors them, or go all the way through judgment. But if you go all the way to judgment with someone who can't properly defend themselves, it's like a 6'4", 300-pound bully picking on a 4'9", 90-pound woman. When they rack up enough wins and they have precedent that favors them, then they can say, "Look, Your Honor, X, Y, and Z." I'm trying to see how much I should say about this, but one strategy that was recommended to me by somebody who I know knows the system and that I think may have gleaned myself through my personal experience is that when going up against the SEC, they're an administrative agency. They're not part of the legislative branch of the government. And so you could go back and forth for years, and almost everybody does. They go through a lot of subpoenaing depositions. They draw a lot of information out of you, and it costs you a lot of money. And then they invariably, often, I'd say more times than not in the crypto sphere, go on to issue a Wells notice and bring you to court. I would think if you have the resources and you truly think that you're not, if you haven't done what they've alleged, it seems to make sense you should go straight to their courts and ask for a declarative judgment. That way you have rights. You could subpoena the SEC versus SEC just asking from you. Ripple, who has spent $170 million thus far, so not many entities or people have $170 million just SEC, one legal case budget, but they have done a very good job with their subpoena powers and deposition powers, and they've pulled a lot of things out of the SEC. The Hinman emails, depending on what has been redacted, should be a treasure trove for everybody interested in what's going on, and conflicts of interest in the SEC. That's my opinion. So as for how much it would affect everybody else, if the fair notice defense goes in favor of Ripple, which of course is fact dependent, and the Hinman emails say anything near what I suspect they say, that would be a feather in the cap for Binance, for Coinbase, for who else did they just sue? There was a third entity. Unfortunately, the lesser capitalized entrepreneurial companies and startups, like the one that starts with a V, they had to go through this 4 years ago. It's too late for them, unfortunately.
That's really affected, innovation in America, and we've seen, companies. America struggled from this. I believe that's my personal opinion. I wanted to say the one consistent thing that we've seen through this regulation or SEC has been the inconsistency. In the Coinbase case, Armstrong, there was no fraud alleged. But then in the Binance case, they named CZ in the case and assets were frozen. We also saw...
I'm sorry, were the assets actually frozen, or was it just a request?
Or I'm sorry, just the, wasn't it the US, Binance US, the assets were frozen?
Now, I know they requested for assets to be frozen in Binance US and CZ and Binance Global, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. But I know that was the request. There's a RJI, a request for judicial intervention, I believe, but I didn't follow that closely. Okay. If they do freeze the international assets, that would be a travesty, I think. That's a guilty to proven innocent.
So then this morning, there was some news that Binance, let me find the link again.
Yeah, Reggie, they put one of the major centralized exchanges out of business. They sued Bittrex and Bittrex CEO after, what was it? Gosh, they were one of the early goers on the centralized exchange. They had to have been in business 10 years, maybe a little bit less, but he just closed his company. Just didn't even try to open in a foreign jurisdiction. Just said it's too dangerous to be playing in this market.
Everybody that the SEC has brought to court has been out of business or has pulled totally out of the U.S. and then has been hampered. I don't know of any entity, even the entity that I think for the most part almost won, which would have been Block One. They raised about 4.1 billion. Let's assume you could chop that in half, assuming, I'm not saying it's the case, they are guilty, they were wash trading, etc. Let's cut that in half. Say they raised $2 billion. They paid what, $27 million as a fine?
I think it was
not even an interest.
Somewhere. Yeah. It was a slap on the hand.
Yeah, not even an interest on the $2 billion. And does anybody I can't remember the name of their chain now. What's the name of their chain?
EOS.
EOS. Does anybody use EOS? I've heard of EOS. So the SEC wipes out entire businesses. Yeah, they wipe out entire businesses. Now, I have my opinion, and I don't believe the SEC has been inconsistent. I believe they've been very consistent. Notice not a single extant or traditional financial institution that's part of the Money Center Bank Club has had to go through this, and they use the technology. Okay, the only banks that have been harmed that I can think of are the banks that bank the crypto industry. That's Silvergate, you know the three. So consistency is, if I were to be a conspiracy theorist and I were to speak freely without fear of retribution, I would say that they are trying to wipe the field of the non-traditional bank, those entities who are not part of the non-traditional bank, those entities who are not part of the traditional banking club.
Yeah.
So, Custodia, Veritasium, Coinbase, Binance, etc. Ripple, even though a lot of these entities actually have banking clients, even though some of these entities own the IP that through patents that underpin the entire industry, they're not part of that group. Now, I could be totally wrong, and I'm not trying to, bring upon any type of negativity or, God forbid, if they come after me again. But I have not seen anybody who is part of the club get taken down unless they bank the club. And
Reggie,
so,
it kind of goes one step further. The JP Morgan people spun up a digital arm called Onyx, which they sold to Joe Lubin over at Consensus. Banks have I think a history of getting into high tech stuff, and then they figure out how difficult it is. So they bring in the guys that can actually maintain it. But, the Veritasium DAO did a deep dive into Onyx and how that system operates. They've been doing cross-border settlements that infringe on your IP since October of 2020. They've been settling billions of dollars cross-border using the JP Morgan coin, which they peg to the dollar. So it's just their way of getting around the SWIFT system and saving hundreds of millions of dollars in fees from SWIFT. So the banks have been doing it, and it just kills me that the SEC will go after Veritasium and go after Coinbase and go after Binance, but they kind of turn a blind eye to JP Morgan. So
right.
if you're a conspiracy theorist and you put a little bit of evidence together, it almost seems like they're clearing the way for the banks to enter with no competition.
Right.
Well,
that might be the step above theory. Okay, well, the step above hypothesis, which would be a theory. So I can see where there will be credence to that. I'm not going to say that it's fact, but if I had to roll the dice and be binary for or against, I'd probably be for that, personally. And I'm not even a gambling man.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Does that go to this tweet here that you kind of retweeted Gensler's words once again? Gensler here is making direct comparison between digital currencies, which he is alleging are unregistered securities. USD directly implies digital USD is an unregistered security. Conflicts and paucity, I'm sorry, I don't know that word, of logic abound in the US. Gold is always ran shotgun with USD to transfer value. And these are Gensler's words now below. We don't need more digital currency. We already have digital currency. It's called the US dollar, Gensler says. We have not seen over the centuries that economies and the public need more than one way to move value. So,
which is unfortunate, because that shows, and I don't want to be offensive and insulting to the chairman, but that doesn't match with history. Number one, the U.S. has had competing currencies: the continental dollar, the Federal Reserve note. Several states had their own currency. Then you had the federal government have a currency. So factually, historically, he's wrong. Okay. Number two, if you only need one way to move value, then gold would be worthless. But not only is gold used to store and move value, the Federal Reserve is probably, or definitely, the largest holder of that machination in the world. Okay, and I could go on and on. What he's saying is, we don't want competition.
right.
Without competition, the who suffers. With the lack, paucity means scarcity. Okay, without competition, who suffers? the end user. And he is now saying outright, we don't need competition. No consumer has ever said there's too much competition. If you look at, I'm using my cell phone now. This is a Galaxy 23 Ultra. This device is fantastic. It does a lot. It does a lot of things very, very well. Okay, without competition, if Samsung was the only phone manufacturer in the world, this would probably still be touch tone or a rotary dial-up that might not even go through the airways. I might still need a copper wire. But the reason why it does HD, 8K video and 2K screens and super fast Wi-Fi and blah, 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 is because they have to compete with Apple and Sony and LG, and you go down the line. And that level of competition gives you the best product. Gensler is saying, we don't want competition. We don't need competition. And so we'll rest with just what we have. Now, here's an example of how crypto, the industry and the technology, has fostered competition. The SWIFT system and that is used it's slow, it's insecure, it's buggy, and it's expensive. All these things at the same time. Nobody's bothered to make any significant upgrades to it. Enter crypto and then enter stable coins and the ability to move value locked into a USD or euro, redeemable for this through the private sector, through private players, and everybody went berserk. They attacked, took apart Facebook and their program, the Libra program, Tether, etc., etc. Yes, there are risks, but there are risks with everything. This competition caused the payment system in the US, which hasn't been updated in decades, to be updated in a few years. The update allows, instead of having 45 minutes to 5 days settlement times, you now have between 1 and 3 seconds. Amazing. Hundreds of thousands of transactions per second throughput at a minimum. Okay, programmable and able to add in APIs, plugins, and bolt-ons. Wow, what a leap into the future. No, the result of competition, the thing that the chairman says we don't need. So if you're looking to protect the investor, why in the world would you purposely limit competition? Now, I know the answer to that, but I'm not going to go any further because I don't want to get any, subpoenas in my email box. So
Sure.
I'm going to keep quiet.
I almost hate to say this, Reggie, but let me step into Gary Gensler's shoes for just a second and posit the other side of that argument. Well, Mr. Middleton, the FedNow system is going to speed up the transaction process with the US dollar to where it's instantaneous. What do you say to that?
That's what it does. It's almost instantaneous. But how does it do that? Do you know how they get such high throughputs and low latency times?
Hold on. Let me think for a second. Did they use somebody's intellectual property?
If I had to guess, yes.
Okay. All right.
They
get that on the record.
Now, I'm not going to say who's intellectual property. I'm not alluding to them losing mine, just to be clear. Okay. So I never said that. Okay.
I didn't say it either. I'm just putting it out there.
I believe they're using a distributed ledger. Okay. That was open source. It was created about 8 to 10 years ago. And it uses nodes that help to manage systems. And those nodes have now become distributed with a consensus algorithm. Sounds familiar?
It sounds really familiar.
Okay. That's according to my estimation, taking a educated guess. Educated and research guess.
Yeah.
Educated and thoroughly researched guess.
Very educated and very researched guess. Speaking of Gary Gensler, I want to go down just a little walk down history lane with him. In 2019, it's alleged that Gary Gensler offered to serve as an advisor to the crypto company for Binance. So he was crypto friendly at that point, I guess, or very interested. We know he had a history of teaching at MIT and things like that. There's this famous video where he says, talking about that 75% of markets were not even securities.
So we already know in the US and in many other jurisdictions that 3/4 of the market are not ICOs or not what would be called securities. Even in the US, Canada, and Taiwan, the 3 jurisdictions that follow something similar to the Howey test.
Okay. I'll make this just really quick and not too painful. So there he's pretty crypto friendly, sounds like. Then we go on to this famous at MIT where he says, you know what, you just have to play the game. This tab instead.
Just replacing one central monopolist with another central monopolist. A lot of commercial banks aren't terribly excited about that. Maybe you're going to have to give some ownership. Maybe you'll have to give 50% of your ownership to the 20 banks that are now, you know, part of this. I mean, there are other ways to build incentive systems. Maybe you.
Oh, and of course it glitches.
Yeah. So Gary is saying that you have to give up half of your project in order to make it go in the market that he's
hold on. I've got one more fun one. Oh, where did it go? Well, it's missing now. I have the little one where he's, oh, here it is. I'm sorry. Now he seems to be, these are his latest attacks.
Hucksters, fraudsters, scam artists, Ponzi schemes, the public being left in line at the bankruptcy courts. We've seen this story before. Huckster.
So he's quite changed his tune.
Well, he was talking about the money center banks in that last clip.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood. I thought he was talking about crypto.
I thought it was Washington Mutual and Countrywide and Enron and WorldCom. I think, you know, the stuff that was regulated by the SEC. I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. It's the first day of sunlight. I'm confused. Excuse me. I digress. Go ahead.
It was tweeted out by Coin Bureau, and it says Gary's latest crypto attacks. It's definitely personal for him. So I need to do my research on that, but that's what it was tweeted out as. So that I'm being
funny. I'm sorry. I'm being a comedian.
Don't throw me off there. Yeah.
Since Netflix that you my own stand up, I'm doing it myself over StreamYard.
Okay. Sorry. But so then this says Gensler is being accused of being in complete contempt of Congress with the crackdown on Coinbase. Then you're seeing Democratic congressman says he's portraying crypto as a villain in order to portray himself as a political hero here. So you're seeing what I'm kind of wondering. We're seeing this wishy-washy, this walk down memory lane with Gensler kind of going, and he's really getting thrown kind of under the bus, depending on whose camp you're in, and trying to make himself the hero in different situations. But I'm curious because, let's see. Gary Gensler stated that, okay. Could Congress be neglecting their job and not creating legislation for cryptocurrencies and instead deferring their responsibility to these unelected agencies like the SEC, which led to all this regulation by enforcement? And that leaves Gary hanging out there to take all the hit for all of this.
Well, I will not comment negatively on Congress. So I'm not saying I have a negative comment, but if I did, I wouldn't issue it here because, unfortunately, I do not have the freedom to speak in such a way. I think would be unwise. Okay, but what I can say is, Gary Gensler is an employee. Okay, the Congress members of Congress, and the members of Senate, they're employees. They're government employees. They work for you. Okay, they work for the administration. And employees do usually, primarily, almost solely what their employers tell them to do, their bosses. A lot of people tend to forget that they're employees. Gary Gensler is getting a lot of heat. Okay, he's doing X, Y, and Z. Gary Gensler is doing exactly what his predecessor did. As a matter of fact, I still allege that his predecessor was more aggressive than Gary was. Gary just has,
Jay Clayton was more aggressive and more tyrannical, in my opinion, than Gary.
Put it this way. It just came out that the Binance investigation was started by Clayton, not Gensler. Okay. Who sued Ripple at midnight, the day that they were leaving the office?
Jay Clayton.
Who sued Veritas and Reggie Middleton and accused them of fraud and everything else? Clayton. And the same thing with Ton and Telegram, and the library came way before Gensler. Now, to put this to give perspective, Clayton was a Republican who worked for a Republican administration ran by Donald Trump, who is literally, at least idealistically on paper, the antithesis of the Biden administration, which is Democratic, etc. But they're doing the exact same thing. So don't fall for the political okie doke. Left versus right, Republican versus Democrat, Gensler versus Clayton. Their behavior is identical going through, which means that there's a common thread that would benefit from this action that persisted through the Trump administration to the Biden administration, and very, very strong chance into the next administration, regardless of who it may be. Kamala Harris, Pence, DeSantis, who knows? Drake Hook, Lisa Davis, whoever it may be, those employers, those bosses are going to most likely cause this ideology to continue on. The entrepreneurial sector, I don't think in the U.S. will ever be allowed to supplant the traditional banking sector. Very, very powerful lobby, very powerful industry. They are literally the gatekeepers of capital. If anybody's never going to run out of money, it's going to be them. Okay, they're the shareholders of the largest financial institution and arguably the most powerful institution in the world, which is the Federal Reserve System. Remember, Federal Reserve is a private entity, 12 major shareholders, which are the money center banks. The Federal Reserve prints money at will. So the only thing that could compete with the Federal Reserve in terms of global power would probably be the U.S. military. I don't know which one is more powerful, but it's irrelevant because they're all pretty much the same entity under the U.S. So do you really think a bunch of crypto enthusiasts and smart guys with good ideas and some tech are going to run over the first and or second largest entities in the world in terms of power and influence? I don't think so. A dose of reality. I know you don't like to hear it.
I know.
Then shoot the messenger. Okay. This is Sparta. If you haven't seen that, that's just a classic.
It's a good movie.
300. Yeah.
It is. I know I had wanted to ask you about, I kind of skipped over when we were talking about the tweet about Gensler talking about the USD being a digital dollar. And then this morning there was information that Binance US was going to halt USD deposits. Here it is.
Yeah, you can't deposit USD directly into Binance, and CZ put out some information warning that USD withdrawals from Binance are going to be cut off by the SEC or the US government as early as Tuesday of next week.
It's a little late for that, but I can understand why he's doing it. I have heard, give me 1 second, let's let the garbage truck go by.
This is proof of real life.
You know, garbage trucks going by on a day that's not even a garbage collection day. This is all to ruin this video. It's a conspiracy.
It's okay. It's proof of live streaming, so we'll accept it.
Okay. So, it seems or it appears that CZ created Binance.us to take the pressure off of Binance, to make it fully regulated in the U.S., domiciled in the U.S., to play by the rules. And it worked for him about as well as it worked for me. Veritasium. But we shall see. There are a lot of allegations by the SEC in their moving papers, or their complaint, I'm sorry, alleging a lot of things. I have learned that what is alleged is not necessarily fact. And it has a lot of flowery and potentially excessive interpretation of fact, and doesn't necessarily include both sides of the story. I'm not going to say this is not a big at the SEC. It's just been my experience after reading the press releases or what is claimed, and then going through the answer to the other side, which is very elucidating. So if you really want to know what's going on, of course you read the SEC papers. I'm not going to opine on who's right or who's wrong. But if you only read one side of the story, you don't know the story. Okay, so you have to read the other side. Think about a divorce, and you hear the woman saying, you know, he did X, Y, Z, and you know, he's a bad person, he did whatever. And of course, you say that must be a horrible person until you hear his side of the story. And she, you know, he says, well, you forgot the part about when she brought the pet rabbit, and et cetera, et cetera. And then when you hear both sides of the story, there's this saying, there are three sides to every story: your side, my side, and the truth, right?
Very true.
Hey, Reggie,
Go ahead.
yeah, if I can, Lisa, do you want to follow another line of questioning, or do you want me to start bringing up some questions from the community?
I have one more question. I don't know if he's going to want to answer it, but I'm curious what your thoughts are on the thought that the SEC Coinbase, with Congress, you know, not doing their job, neglecting to do their job to create legislation for cryptocurrency, and instead deferring their responsibility, you know, and having this happen with where SEC has, you know, had all this regulation by enforcement. We've watched this happen over and over again, and it's been so destructive to the industry and to the individuals who they've, you know, sworn to protect. You see this Coinbase case move into the courts, where then laws could be created instead of them happening in Congress, where we the people could speak into it by speaking to our congressmen and women. You think that is or could be a plan, or could have been, because I think it's strange that Brian Armstrong's not named in the Coinbase suit, but CZ Binance is. Like, the suits are so very different, you know. And there was just that big movement of coin the other day, but SEC is not looking into that while this case is active. There's some things that seem not right with that case.
Well, Coinbase is a public company, and I'm sure Coinbase has done their fair share of lobbying. Accusing a public company CEO of fraud is a serious step, as compared to accusing a small non-public private entity of fraud, or accusing the $40 billion Chinese Canadian CEO of a foreign entity of fraud. You know, the first and the third, or the second and the third accusations are much more politically palatable, in my opinion, than the first. Because if you're going to accuse Armstrong of fraud, you know, I can see there's some distaste, and if he has friends in certain places, you know, I can see potential pushback. Again, this is pure speculation from our perspective. I don't know. But there was no surprise that they went after CZ. There's also a legal strategy perspective. When you accuse somebody of fraud, if you're the SEC and make a fraud accusation, you get much, much wider subpoena and discovery powers, much wider. basically you could cast a wide net. And if you accuse them of fraud, you also have the potential to freeze assets. And lo and behold, guess what they asked to do is to have an asset freeze. So I cannot opine on whether he committed fraud or not. I can opine of the aggression level of the SEC and tactics that I wouldn't particularly favor myself. But that's me, and I'm different. And obviously, I don't run these entities. I'm still stuck on right and wrong. Because how far out of reality I am. So my parents really crippled me. Really crippled me. You know?
That's your biggest crime, Reggie, is knowing what's right and wrong in this world. Let me follow up on that. How ironic is it that the same SEC that approved the IPO for Coinbase, the initial public offering, and brought and approved Brian Armstrong and his group of bringing coin to the market, how ironic is it that now the SEC, the same SEC, is pursuing them for selling unregistered securities?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's ironic, but you know, the SEC has a lot of smart lawyers in it. Yeah, and I'm sure they have a strategy around it. For instance, they were very careful what they named as a security or not. Take note, they didn't name Ethereum as a security, but they named Cardano as a security. Cardano is a fork of Ethereum. Actually, well, no, Cardano was, at least I'm sure the founders of Cardano would say it was built from scratch. But I do think there's significant similarities between Cardano and Ethereum. One of the CEO of IOHK, Input Output Hong Kong, is one of the founding developers of Ethereum. Okay, so to say that Cardano is a security and Ethereum is not is interesting. But here's a conspiratorial reason why you wouldn't name Ethereum as a security, because if you did, and then you would be casting doubt on the fact that you allowed Coinbase to go public when they were trading Ethereum. When Coinbase went public, were they trading Cardano and Solana, et cetera, et cetera? I don't know, but it's a possibility not. So if this conspiracy theory is accurate in any part, they chose tokens that Coinbase started trading after the IPO analysis and review.
Yeah.
Right. Now, if they said that Bitcoin was a security, then you could say, well, you thought Bitcoin was a security and you gave them the okay after you knew they were trading Bitcoin. But if they have all these tokens that Coinbase started trading after the fact, then they're all clear. This is just one out of many potential arguments that could be made. And I haven't looked into the dates and when they started trading it, but I know that the SEC does have some intellectual capital or horsepower on their side. What they have been disadvantaged in when they do lose is that they're used to saying something, having the courts just take it, and they're used to being able to overpower their opponents in the crypto field, simply because the opponents, you know, startups are not geared to fight a government agency in court. Ripple spent $170 million, according to the CEO. Okay, most crypto startups don't have $170 million. And if they had it, they definitely can't spend it on one single court case while they're not even doing business in that jurisdiction. So understand that the SEC's powers are in part due to their ability to steamroll others and the damage that's done just by making the accusation. You know, I had a sterling reputation until the SEC did the press release, and then everybody and their mother were calling me a scam and all types of names, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, a lot of the powers are not just legislative. A lot of them come from market forces and reputation damage, et cetera, and just pure costs and economics of fighting them.
Yeah, no doubt about that. One of the questions, Reggie, that came from the Veritasium community, and I don't know how much you can talk about it because I know that it's on ongoing cases, the Veritasium Capital versus Coinbase case. I think the public records showed that you withdrew the case against Coinbase. Do you want to go into that at all? Is that something you want to talk about, or should we move on?
Well, I'll give you a quick answer. My lawyer died. And so.
I'm sorry to hear that, Reggie.
Yeah, he was a good guy. Very, very, very strong. Oh, 1 second. If you take a look at the record and Coinbase and the entities that I deal with are hired the biggest and the brightest in the U.S., at least in terms of brand name. My lawyer is very, very skilled and knowledgeable. But, you know, he had the ultimate excuse, so I bowed out. I can't speak any further on this, but use your imagination. You can see what comes next.
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that, Reggie. That had to be a big loss. I know your lawyer was not only your lawyer, but a friend of yours. And so,
yeah, he's a good guy. Yeah.
Tough loss.
It was unexpected. So.
Yeah. And it's hard to find good IP lawyers who know a little something about crypto. Believe me, I've been looking for a while.
Yeah. You know, it's even harder. It's dangerous to find a good IP lawyer who thinks he knows something about crypto. Very, very dangerous. I can't speak on it now, but of course, I've been going back and forth with quite a few IP lawyers in the crypto field and a lot of guys with big names. And it is surprising how poor a job that they've done on certain things. I'm literally shocked.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not unhappy about it if they're, opposing me, but some of them not opposing me, some with me, some opposing. But there's a lot of learning that needs to be done. And, brand names are not everything. Just keep that in mind.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing that your IP has been strengthened since you filed the case against Coinbase. If I'm remembering correctly, the Japanese Patent Office awarded you several other claims, and it seems like when that happens, the U.S. Patent Office would probably follow. In fact, the last time I checked, there have been 102 companies like Wells Fargo, MasterCard, Dell, IBM that had identified your patent as prior art. If you decided to go back into litigation, would you have a broader reach or more claims against Coinbase or other entities that infringe on your IP?
I know more about the companies and I understand the patent better. Now, in explaining that, I came up with the idea. Our team wrote the patent. So you think, well, you should know it. But the industry is moving. The technology is moving. Everything is changing. And I get smarter or wiser every day. And now I understand how the patent and the claims to the patent fit into the industry better every day. From the time the patent was granted to now, I am significantly better versed in it. I can tell you right now, I have yet to find any significant entity or product that does not infringe. And that's a pretty bold statement. So either I don't know that many entities or products, or I'm of the mindset that this is truly foundational technology patent. I could be just totally wrong. Don't get me. Right? I could be, but I obviously think I'm not.
Well, with that said, one of the questions from the community is asking if you will be enforcing your patents in Japan anytime soon.
We shall see.
Okay. Always a mystery. And then also they wanted to know when you're going to start giving the legacy bankers the old one too.
I'm not going to sit here and threaten legacy bankers because I don't know how that has made anybody live longer or have a happier, healthier, wealthier life in doing that.
Yeah,
but
the most wise strategy.
Yeah, let's put it this way: if I'm correct in what the SEC chairs have been doing, my conspiracy theory is correct, and I will call it more of an observation than a conspiracy theory. But let's be as humble as possible and call it conspiracy theory. They are trying to clear the field for the traditional finance system. the traditional finance system still has to walk in the same footsteps. You know, they have curried the favor of the regulatory bodies, but you know, patent law is still patent law, so nothing has changed there. Now they may have more capital, but I also think that they'd be much less willing to get into a dragged out patented IP or patented tech battle. I really don't think they would. Finance now, from this point moving forward, and even from a decade or two moving forward, you know, banks are data companies. They're not what they used to be. When you were a kid, you know, and you went to the bank with your parents, you went to a building made out of marble, usually very high ceilings. Now, most of the time when you go to the bank, you go to your cell phone or a computer. Banks are technology companies. Some banks just don't know it yet.
It is changing. With that being said, so, and moving into solutions and that all changing, if the SEC were to be reformed, restructured, changed, and solutions were to be put in place, do you see, what would some of those changes be? What would you see as solutions for the SEC to be in a positive way? And would you be consider being part of that?
I considered running for office at one point, and that was just my naivete, you know, foolishness, stupidity. You know, there's this movie called Bullworth. Have you ever heard of it? It's about maybe 30 years old, 20 years old. Warren Beatty starred with can't remember her name. Beautiful woman. She played Storm in X-Men. What's her name? Light skinned black woman. Help me out. Nobody saw Bullworth?
No.
Nobody saw the X-Men?
It's on our list.
Why can't I figure her name? Well, anyway, so he played a senator who's gonna die. He thought he had cancer, lethal cancer. So he took out a life insurance policy on himself and to collect. And he went around and since he said he was gonna die, she was also in John Wick 3.
Halle Berry?
Halle Berry, yes.
Okay.
I don't know why I can't think of her name since I'm in love with her, right? But well, anyway,
good to know a girl's name when you're in love with her.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that could be why it never works out, right? I love you. What? I told you I have my little stand-up going. So he played a politician who took out a life insurance policy on himself. Oh, he didn't think he had cancer. He did something. He owed some money to a bookie, and the bookie hired a hitman out to kill him. Okay, so he got a life insurance policy on himself. That hitman ended up being Halle Berry, but Halle Berry was very sweet and loving. They formed like a friendship, etc. But that's neither here or there. Since he thought he was going to die, and he was a U.S. Senator, he said, since I'm not going to be here, I might as well just be honest and tell the truth. And that's what the movie is about, an honest senator. And woo!
I'm going to go watch that.
Everywhere he went, he told the truth. So he went to Harlem to the black churches and spoke his mind. It's like an explosion erupted. He went to Hollywood and spoke his mind about, you know, ethnicities in Hollywood. That didn't go well. And he went to Congress on the floor. So that's me. I can play the game for a while, but sooner or later, probably sooner, the truth is going to start slipping out. And it's probably not going to go well for me. And I'll try mightily, but sooner or later, probably sooner, the truth is going to slip out. It's hard. My parents really messed me up in my upbringing. Reggie, need to petition them. Yes.
Reggie, the system that we have now is broken. The SEC is obviously playing favorites. They're protecting their friends and putting the hammer to everybody else. I would even posit that our banking system is in jeopardy of failure. We have a debt-based system that doesn't work for the people. If the government came back and said, hey, Reggie Middleton, you've got this wonderful and foundational IP to solve a lot of problems, would you at least consult with them and set them on the right track?
Yeah, of course I would.
Okay. That's We need
Consulting with
guys
them
like
as
you.
a contractor.
We need guys like you up there.
Yeah, consulting as a contractor is very different from, being an appointee of the system or an elected official. It's just not a good fit.
Yeah.
Not a good fit at all.
Well, let me back up a little bit. Let me back
Oh,
up a little bit.
but before you go on, though,
Okay.
if I'm not mistaken, if I'm correct, the Federal Reserve is implementing a DLT system next month, and it's
That's right.
big. It's going to be the biggest system implemented. As a matter of fact, I think you pointed this out to me. The DTCC has implemented 100% haircuts on collateral. But that a haircut is a discount to the value of something that you post, and collateral is something that you post as insurance policy in case.
The key part there is it's rehypothecated collateral.
Okay, well, rehypothecated collateral, which again, when you rehypothecate something, you put a haircut. The greater the haircut, the less leverage you can put in the system. 100% haircut means you have no leverage, so you don't get credit for putting anything up. So it's not a loan. It's like having a 0 LTV loan. That means that your down payment on the house is 100% of the house. That's not a loan. You bought the house in cash.
That's right.
So that is a significant, very stringent criteria, but there's a way to get around it. And that is, well, if you go through the FedWire system, you don't have to pay the 100% haircut in the collateral. The FedWire system will be FedNow. So when they force that through, if you take a look at the amount of transactions that go through the system of securities, bonds, stocks, swaps, commodities, etc., leverage loans, leverage traded assets, it's significant. Billions of transactions, trillions of dollars worth of collateral moved. And I'm talking on a daily basis. This is not annually or every decade. This is daily. So
Reggie, I've always been kind of a financial and crypto geek, and I'm probably one of the few people that have actually read all of the claims in your patents. You and me might be in an exclusive club together. Having read the latest claims that were awarded by the Japanese Patent Office, it seems like the FEDNOW system, CBDCs, all of that falls under your intellectual property. Would that be a misinterpretation on my part, or am I going down the right path?
Well, I don't want to comment on that for legal reasons, but I haven't said I disagree with you.
Okay, fair enough. So that leads me to the next question by one of our viewers. The e-Naira in Nigeria is a CBDC that was presented and implemented in Nigeria. It failed. The Chinese put out a CBD system where they actually gave away tens of millions of yuan, and nobody used it. It failed as well. So the question is, how do you see the FedNow system playing out when we have all of these failures in the CBDCs that have been implemented in different countries?
Well, technically, the FedNow is not a CBDC, even though it does everything the CBDCs do, except for sovereign independence. And the U.S. government is not going to want that. That's a bug, not a feature from their perspective.
Right.
And they're also not going to ask you to use it. For instance, like the DTCC system, they're not making you use it. But if you don't use it, you take 100% haircut. In other words, do everything in cash in your lending facility. The whole purpose of a lending facility is to get a loan, right?
That's right.
And it's also not a bad system. If you think about it, what FedNow is, it's a messaging system, but effectively it's a Federal Reserve sponsored and created version of Cash App or Zelle.
Right.
Okay? Except the counterparty can never go out of business because it gets to print cash on demand. It gets to create cash on demand. It's actually, I haven't seen it work yet, but I've done a lot of research on it, and it seems to be fairly elegant. And a lot of people are concentrating on AI and, the topic of the day, and they are ignoring the fact that next month, there's going to be a major paradigm shift in the way money is transferred. The fee for transferring through the FedNow system would be between 4 to 4.5 cents per per transaction. Latency is between 1 to 3 seconds, with 3 seconds being the high side of a transaction latency. So for 4 to 4.5 pennies, you get to move up to $100,000 in 1 to 3 seconds. There's nothing that compares to that right now. With several hundred thousand, at least 100,000 transactions per second in throughput, and it should be able to scale much more than that because it's using a distributed ledger system, but it's not. The consensus is very different because they're not looking for central proof, central resistant, because they're the Federal Reserve. So it's closed between the Federal Reserve and the member banks of the Federal Reserve. Okay, and they're already highly KYC'd, if you can even say KYC in such a scenario. So they've adopted the technology, right? They're about to launch the technology. I doubt very seriously if they're lying about its capability, and you're going to use it every time you use a bank or a transaction. You know, it's just a done deal. Now, you can't use the FEDNOW system directly, but your bank can use it directly on your behalf. So if you want to make a purchase of, you want to buy a computer through Amazon, okay, you could pay through FedNow, and within 3 seconds, the vendor gets the payment and they can ship off. If you have something that doesn't have very, very large payments, or does have large payments per transaction, you could do micropayments without much of an issue. 1 to 3 second latency, 4 cents in terms of cost.
Right.
You know, you can stream by the hour, literally.
Right.
You know, get a movie every 5 minutes, 2 minutes. Cars can just talk to each other and can send payments to each other real time. So
it's all third party, and there's no privacy. And there was just recently, so YouTube has freed everyone on YouTube to be allowed to talk about the 2020 election information. There was a video that came out. There's been investigations where there are Chinese servers that found these giant databases of all the election workers in America, all of their private information, their banking information, their home information, the names of their children listed in all capital letters, not just in America, but then they went on to find other countries' election information. And it went all back to this company called Connect, and then Votum, and then people that were in the election boards were on these boards of these companies. And I'm just thinking, if we have this closed system like FedNow, that our purchasing is only allowed through that, and we don't have an option to purchase peer-to-peer, then we have no privacy or ways to transact in a private way without it having an option of being hacked by someone, something, somehow in a situation similar to that.
I think privacy in financial transactions, at least electronic financial transactions, is a pipe dream, personally. You know, you don't have privacy in the banking system right now. You know, every single transaction made, you'll see if you look at the papers, or the allegation from the papers for Binance, where it's alleged that the SEC alleges that money from Binance US went to CZ's private funds. They got this information from the banking system, Silvergate Bank, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, I'm not going to comment on the veracity of the statement, whether they did it or not, but all this came from the banking system. Now, of course, CZ runs a cryptocurrency trading company, and so it's very difficult to determine what values flowed where when the vast majority of the values could be in crypto and not US dollars through the banking system. But that's a different conversation. And of course, that information is not as easily available to a plaintiff as the banking system information was. They just subpoenaed from the bank. CZ possibly and presumably tries very hard to conceal transactions for corporate reasons, security reasons. I wouldn't even call it privacy, you know, security and corporate prudence. Okay, but the governments, and not just this government, all the major developed governments are not going to allow for private non-government sponsored transactions. You know, I would desire that. I'm sure you would desire that, but I can tell you someone who would not desire that, and that would be those who run the governments of these countries. And if you ran the government of these countries, you wouldn't desire it either. And if they were in your shoes, they would probably desire it. Now, a lot of people don't take privacy seriously. Many, many people don't. I do. I take it very seriously. You know, that's why if you look at my Instagram, you don't see my children. You don't see where I vacationed. If I ever could take a vacation, you see none of that. Because why would I blast my privacy throughout the world where it could be used against me? But most people don't think that way.
Yeah, one of the big things in the Veritasium community is that people fell in love with about peer-to-peer capital markets is not only the privacy part of it, but the disintermediation part of it. You know, there's a big portion of wealth, as Gary Gensler says, hey, all you got to do is give up 50% of your project to the banks in order to get the liquidity you need to make it go in the commercial markets. So one of the questions from our community is there a chance, and this didn't come from me or anybody else at the VeriDAO, this is from the Veritasium official community, is there any chance that the Veritasium platform could be given new life and put back up so that the dream that we have of peer-to-peer capital markets might be enjoyed by everyone and in regulation with the authorities? In other words, completely regulated, but peer-to-peer capital markets that actually work for the people.
I think there's a very strong possibility of that happening. And the peer-to-peer portion, if it were to happen, there'll be more peer-to-peer than anything else. I wouldn't spearhead it. I've had enough of, you know, this fighting with my own government. I find it extremely distasteful. Right. But if it were to be done, I'm pretty sure it would be almost purely peer-to-peer. You know, purely software driven. And if someone were to go after somebody, they have to go after the users. Or they don't have to. They can do what they want, which is back to my distaste of having to fight my own government. I just can't believe it. You know, right. Think about if the government took out Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla and, you know, Henry Ford and Jonas Salk and Mr. McCoy from the real McCoy. If you don't know that story, look it up where the term the real McCoy came from. But just took out everybody. You know, the inventor of the IC chip and the mobile phone. We'd all be speaking Mandarin or Japanese right now.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Well, it's good to hear that you think that there's some hope for the peer-to-peer capital markets to be given new life. You know, it's one of the reasons that I followed you since the Boom Bust blog days, because you're a genius in the financial realm, and especially in the macro area. And when I saw the peer-to-peer capital markets come up and your initial distribution offering being offered, I said, man, this is the thing that's going to change the world. This is it. This is going to help us, you know, the inventors, the entrepreneurs. This is going to help us get more ingenuity to the people. And I still believe it's true today. And here's what I believe, and I want you to opine on this if you can. I believe that it's your intellectual property, the only thing that the government didn't strip from you, that's going to lead the charge. It's going to be the tip of the spear. Can you opine a little bit about how your intellectual property can be used to change the world, even though the government has tried to stop you from doing that?
I would like to, but I'm going to do something that's going to make everybody say, oh, well, Reggie's not the same. No, I'm not the same. I am not going to opine on any anti-government rhetoric, because from an investment perspective, the risk-reward ratio is skewed heavily against my favor. Okay?
I hear you.
Heavily. All risk, no reward. And listen, there's certain parts of the government I'm definitely in favor of. There's a couple of politicians I'm like, I really like that person. I love people who speak their mind and show some ethics. Even if their ethics don't agree with mine, their morals might not agree Their ethics might not agree with mine, but they try and stick to them. That's what I appreciate. But, that job is not an ethical job. It's not. If you don't like heights, don't be a fireman or a construction worker. Okay? You don't fit the job description.
Before we close, I wanted to ask you, you have quite the reputation for calling strikes and balls in the financial system, to say the least. You called the Bear Stearns failure in 2008. And just 3 years ago, you made a video warning about the impending commercial real estate crash that we're seeing a lot of the fallout from now, that's leading to, I think you called it the greatest depression that we may face. You guys can go watch that on Reggie Middleton's YouTube channel. And you had a chart right about the 7-minute moment. And I'm wondering, is there a solution for the people, for us to escape that greatest depression?
Well, we could look back in history. Every time you have a significant market crash, a lot of people say, well, asset prices fell through the floor. I would never, I don't want to be in the asset prices when they fall through the floor because you get poor. That is only half the story. When the asset prices fall through the floor, the government or entities that are empowered by the government move in to save those asset price holders. Okay? That's the Federal Reserve, the Treasury, etc. So when asset prices fall through the floor, the holders of these risky assets take a bath. But the smart ones, instead of selling the assets off at low prices, they buy more assets. 2 reasons why that's a good idea. 1, the assets are cheaper. If you like fancy cars and you have, I don't know, what's a cool car? The E-Type Jaguar.
Bugatti.
Or Bugatti.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have a Bugatti. You have the new, the brand new Bugatti. I don't follow them because I don't buy them. I'm not as big as Trey is, but you have a brand new Bugatti, and it normally costs $2.7 million. They go on sale for $150,000. Do you sell your Bugatti for $150,000, or do you buy 5 new Bugattis for, $750,000? You buy the Bugatti, right? The government then comes in, right? Drops interest rates, right? Throws artificial liquidity into the credit system, which drives the price of Bugattis up. And when they drive the price of Bugattis up, they're often driven up past the equilibrium point. So they were at 2.7 million, right? They drop down to 150,000. You buy 5 of them, and then liquidity drives the price of Bugattis up to 3.5 million now. Now you're very wealthy. But the average person, the worker, right, eschews investing in these risky assets, and they stay in cash and they live off their income. So they pursue income, and most unfortunately, they pursue labor-generated income, wages, and they eschew the assets. So they get poorer, right? When interest rates go down, return on your cash goes down, okay? And the assets go up, which you don't own. So you get poorer nominally. You also get even poorer than that relatively, because when other people get wealthier, even if you stayed at the same level, you're relatively poor. And on top of that, when you drop interest rates, you ignite inflation, which eats even more at your wage. So you get even more poor. So you see, this happens, and this happened over and over and over, from the Great Depression to the crash, for the dot-com crash, the 70s and stagflation, perfect example, to right now, to the Great Recession in 2007. And you see it happening now. The closest simulacrum to today would be the 1970s, when Paul Volcker was the chair of the Reserve. Was it Volcker during stagflation?
Yeah, Paul Volcker raised the rates to almost 20%.
Right. And he raised the rates because the commodity prices shot up, and that caused damage. It's a very different economy now. Our economy is primarily knowledge and service-based, and the industrial and manufacturing is powered by technologies, knowledge, and services still. So the linkages are different. It's put together differently, but the macro and microeconomics are the same, right? You have a big asset bust. You go in, you try and save the holders of those assets, which you shouldn't necessarily have to do, but they do anyway. You drop interest rates. It causes prices to go up. It causes return on savings to go down. And it spikes inflation, which devalues the dollar even more. So those workers who rely on income and savings get hurt. And those capitalists who rely on capital assets benefit. So expect that to happen time and time again. The Fed is trying to raise rates. They're raising rates into a slowing economy, but they're saying that the economy is strong. I think that's misleading. It's the metrics of reading the old economy is strong, but this economy doesn't match the old economy. Okay.
So it's my assertion, Reggie, that a Veritasium Capital IP instituted and allowing peer-to-peer capital markets would not guarantee the outcome, but it would at least level the playing field and allow the worker to have a fighting chance to have some wealth.
It gives you the tools to compete without the restrictions.
That's right.
Theoretically, if you're able to do transactions peer-to-peer, someone had assets that they were willing to sell and you were willing to buy, you can buy them. Okay? Theoretically, you didn't have to worry about some regulators saying, you're too dumb to buy these assets. You're not wealthy enough to buy these assets. You can't read enough to buy these assets. You're the wrong color, shape. You have the wrong belief. Your hair's too short, too long, too nappy, too curly, too straight. Whatever criteria.
Accredited investor.
Yeah. Basically, you know how you can, do you know whether you can tell if you could buy the assets or not? The fact that you bought the assets or not.
Let the market make the decision.
Right? And everybody's liable. I know plenty of accredited investors who couldn't think their way out of a wet paper bag with 4 holes built in it. I'm dead serious. That was the one time when I wasn't joking. Everybody's laughing. I'm actually dead serious.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. I got that one. Well, I really appreciate you taking time for us this morning.
Thank you,
and the community appreciates you and all you do to continue to support the community after, all that you've been through. And you're just a real gift to, I think, humanity. All of us just appreciate you and your strength and integrity. I think keep us all moving forward, and we have a lot of hope for the future. So thank you again for everything. I appreciate it. And all of us at the Very Dow appreciate you as well.
Well, thank you. You make me blush. You say all these platitudes. I'm like, I want to meet that guy.
It keeps us going. That there's good people out there when we see so much corruption. It's really inspiring. Yeah. So I really
the world is hungry for truth and for good people, and you embody both of those. So thank you.
Well, thank you. All right. I really appreciate that.
Well, thanks. All of you, thank you for joining us in the live chat today. Please leave a comment below, like and share this video to get more truth out there. And we will see you guys all on the Very chat in Telegram and on the next time on the Very Dow YouTube channel. Thanks.